Hi, everyone, and welcome to TalkOnTopicz podcast. Today we have with us Keinan Briggs. He is a virtual sports coach and mentor. Hi, Keenan. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So excited we could get you here with us. Could you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, what your website, KeenanBridges.com, has to offer the community, and about your journey?
So what I do is I'm a professional youth sports consultant. What I do is I educate coaches on how to enhance their coaching ability, parents on how to manage their athletes, and then athletes on how to navigate their skills and athletic abilities. So specifically, what I do is I empower the youth through the avenue of sports so that they can live a life of peace, love, and abundance.
That is wonderful. Share with us, how is it that you became inspired to encourage the youth and get involved in sports?
Well, I've always wanted to help people. When I was 17, I remember I was in the weight room for high school for basketball, and then a voice came over me and said, what do you want? Like, what do you want to do? And I just answered it with, I don't know. I just know I want to help people. 2 years later, I was a personal trainer, and that was pretty much the epitome at that time of helping people in my eyes. And I always was an athlete, did things like that, and I just felt that that was something I really enjoyed. But as I did it, it wasn't with adults,
Mm.
and the main reason was when I worked with adults, there just was no passion behind it. There was no devotion. It was that they would complain so much about what they were doing, and in my head, I would think, "Well, why are you paying me this money to train you?" Um, and then I just had an opportunity to work with a football company that came out to our college, and it just clicked with working with young youth athletes. They're passionate, and I was able to be a part of their journey and actually enjoy their their success basically um, as they pretty much reached their goals. And I was able to see that journey and be a part of it. And it was really fun just to be a part of that journey with them. So
Wonderful. How do you, that voice that you heard, could you explain to the audience, how do you identify that voice from being a voice that steers you in the right direction versus a voice of fear? How did you know that was a voice you should listen to versus, something else, like just an idea?
yeah. Um, the voice is different because it stopped me in what I was doing. And it wasn't that I was doing something like, I don't know, skateboarding, and I'm thinking of, "Oh, what if I fall?" It was I was just working out, and this voice came over me and said, "What do you wanna do next? Like, what do you wanna do?" And it was just a different type of voice. It wasn't a thought. It didn't come from the conscious me, so to speak, and, it just caught my attention, and even to this day, I can remember exactly where I was at that moment. So I think in our life, we have those moments that we stamp as, keep this moment. And that was one that I knew to keep, even when I was a young 17-year-old.
Wow. So you started this when you were 17?
Actually, before,
Wow.
yeah, so I was riding my bike home, and the bike I was riding was my mom's bike. I might have been, man, uh, maybe 11 or 10. And I kept getting this image of my face hitting something, the side of my face hitting like the ground or concrete or something like that. Um, and so my bike that I had got stolen. So I was riding my mom's bike to and from the Boys and Girls Club. And she had the road bikes back in the day where you just literally flip a switch and the tire comes off. Well, somebody, I guess, did a prank and flipped the switch. So when I did a wheelie, the wheel came off. And in that moment, I realized what was going to happen. And so when I fell, I saw that image in my head when I fell. And so I
Wow.
prayed that I did not want to be able to have that, whatever that was, I did not want it. And so that was pretty much like my first time experiencing something beyond me.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, then at 17, I had that thought. And so, um, the rest of it was kind of blind to what I was experiencing. But as I look back in hindsight, I been kind of in tune with, um, just things beyond myself, spiritual, reality and all those things. So
How did you gain the confidence to trust in the unnatural? Sounds like you have a pretty healthy spiritual life.
2014, I had like a nasty, toxic relationship, and I just went into this. It was categorized as a depression,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't feel like it was warm on my heart. It felt like it was a process. It felt like more of a transition. So even this day, I
Mm,
don't call it depression. I call it a transition because I was moving from somewhere to somewhere.
wow.
And during that time, I just was just to myself. Um, didn't watch TV. I was just reading. At that time, I was coaching high school track, and I had my club team. And so that was enough to cover my bills. So I was making enough for my bills, didn't have a car, didn't have a social life. So I was literally in the house all day, would train and come back, and I would train uh, probably 10 hours a week. So I really had a limited schedule. So the rest of the time I was reading. I probably read a book a week. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I was really reading a lot. I was journaling a lot. And looking back now, I went through my spiritual enlightenment process through that time frame, and it was exactly 9 months when I look back and
Wow.
realize. So I was kind of reborn in that spiritually, and so just going through that process and reading, I felt that I've gotten like double majors, triple majors, or whatever you want to call it, based off of time, the amount of
Mm,
hours that I put into learning and reading. Um, and that was where I kind of got comfortable with the multiple realities that we could live depending on how we choose to perceive it.
mm. The multiple realities we can live. I want to touch on that. But I mean, Keenan, so you started off so young and trusting in yourself, believing in yourself. It sounds like you were an entrepreneur before you were even 18, and you're still working as an entrepreneur, believing in yourself. Your spiritual practices have grown, it sounds like, and you went through a transformation. I want to know what led you to trusting in that still voice when you were in that dark place? How did you know to proceed? You see what I'm saying? For
Mhm.
those who are lost and may be in that moment where they're experiencing a depression or a hard place and they're not sure that this is their moment.
Yeah. Where I became conscious about it, where I consciously accepted it, was in 2009. Um, so I went through that spiritual enlightenment transition process, came out of it, and was kind of just accepting would be the the space I was in. I was just back into the world. I was accepting of whatever would come. Um, but moved to New Jersey for a job. Didn't work out. Came back. But when I left, I got rid of everything. The
Mm,
car. Like I literally had just 2 luggage cases, and that
wow.
was all I had. Right.
Wow.
So when I moved back, I ended up getting a place, got the job in like a week or so. Because as an entrepreneur, like it, the hustle is there.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up sitting in this empty room, right? Just got out of bed finally. And I said, I prayed to God and I said, I want to learn how to be successful, not just become it, but I want to learn the process of how.
Mhm.
Randomly, another voice came in and said, go to the library. There was one that happened to be across the street. I had no money, but the books that were on the shelves were 25 cents each. And the book I picked up was The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Judge Murphy.
Wow, I
Yeah.
love this.
And Peak Performance by Garfield. I forget the
Wow.
first name. But within those are books, I don't want to say you should read those, but those are 2 that impacted me the most because everyone's going to have their own version of what impacts them. But what I took from this power of the subconscious mind basically was I'm the one who controls my mind.
Mm,
And I never knew that up until
mm,
that point. And then when it came to peak performance, it talked about visualization and writing down your goals.
Mm.
And so that year is where I tried it. You know, I
Mhm.
tried it, and without going to that story, I tried it. It worked out, and then that's where I decided this is the direction I'm going, and I never looked back.
Wow. So when you started journaling and visualization, it was the book that kind of inspired you to do that.
Correct. I never visualized ever.
So after reading those books and you started visualizing, could you share with the audience what is that process? Did you write it down, then you visualize and you saw the manifestation, and that motivated you to what?
Nothing. I was getting nothing.
Oh,
As in,
okay.
I was just blindly trying it.
Hmm.
And one activity was to tell your mind that you want to wake up at a certain time.
Hmm.
And I did, and I woke up at the exact time. And I
Wow.
was like, But then I was like, but if I know I have to get up early, like I sleep a different way and I get up early. So I was like, that doesn't really make too much sense. But that was one of my like, moments, right?
Mm.
And then when I wrote the goals down, I actually wrote down 4 unique goals, and
Mhm.
I wrote them in such a way that it wouldn't be a coincidence if they came true.
Oh,
I know that I wanted a car that represented my hard work. I wanted a relationship. I wanted to make thousands of dollars. 'Cause at that time, I wasn't. And
mhm.
I wanted to make the USA National Outdoor Championships for track and field. And
Big goals.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, this is what I want. And I just would get up, and wouldn't really think too much about it, but I would just keep reminding myself of those goals. Like every day I looked at them, I pretty much fed those goals every day. I showed love to them to where that they were able to love me back, and they manifested.
Mm.
The company I was working for was like, we love what you're doing. We want to hire you, put you on salary. And the take home was $2,005. So it was
Wow.
thousands of dollars, right?
Check.
Yeah, I probably should have said more, but I got what I received. Like I asked for that.
Wow.
Then they said, well, you can't be a full-time staff member if you don't have a car. So like we're gonna just finance you a car. They bought me a car, and then they took out of my check. So that represented my hard work. And
This is
then
getting exciting.
yeah, then the relationship came, and then I was sitting at the desk at work, and I was number, I don't know, 20 something on the list of athletes to qualify for USA Nationals. They only
Mhm.
take so many. And there were 6 athletes for some reason that were ranked in the world, Olympians, all that stuff, that just opted out of the meet. And I was the final qualifier for the USA Championships. Like I was the last person to get in.
Wow.
Yeah, I met the cutoff by the last spot. And then I jumped up, and I was so excited. And I was like, wait, I don't know how I'm going to get to Iowa. I didn't have any money to get to Iowa. However, one of my clients, he saw how excited I was, and I had a raffle set up to the company. And he was like, here, I'm going to buy $500 worth of tickets. And that
Wow.
$500 was what flew me and helped me for my room and board. So I jumped, I PR'd, ranked 13th in the US,
Wow.
took the public bus to get there, signed autographs, and I'm like, I ain't taking the bus back. I'm not I'm not taking the bus back. If I gotta beg for $1, I'll get $1, take a taxi or whatever. And so I ended up taking a taxi, but when I came back, I knew that that was the secret to life, was living with deliberate intention.
Ooh, living with deliberate intention. That reminds me of Neville Goddard. Okay, so I love that story. What a wonderful story. What's the formula? Give it to us. One, two, three. I mean, you got everything on your list.
Yeah, yeah. And the next year, I just repeated that same formula, and
Mm,
everything came true again.
wow. So it's
So
deliberate intention and belief,
correct.
writing it down and visualizing it. You said every single day, being consistent within that belief and moving towards your goal.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because logically, our mind uses our past experiences.
Mm.
So when we think about, oh, I know how to make a bunch of money. Well, yeah, you know how to make the money that you currently have. You
Mm.
don't know how to make the money that you're dreaming of. So instead of trying to figure out how to do it, I just sit in that space of what it feels like to have it. And then
Mm.
every opportunity I get, I I act as if I already have.
Mm.
And obviously, like if someone needs $1 million and I don't have it, like I can't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna make it up. But what I could do is go back home and dream my day
Mm.
out and dream my day differently in favor of the day that I wanted to actually have. And
Mm.
so through all the reading that I just kept doing, I dove in from spirituality to the way the mind works and um, metaphysics and the stars and astrology. I went so many different routes. I was to this day I still read about 2 books a month.
Wow.
And it's been since then, so about 12 years, 11, 12 years that I've been consistently reading. But the help is I read audiobooks and I read at 1.5 speed. So I'm able to read faster. And any books that I feel like I want to get it again, I just read it again until I really
Mm.
understand it. So sometimes I'll read a book 3 or 4 times. And if a book, is a 4 hour read, well, times 1.5 speed, it ends up being, 2.5 hours. That's to work and home, 30 minutes. That's an hour gone already. So I can read the book 3 times in that week. So
Wow.
that's my way that I kind of get that information in quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, without having to stop my day and make excuses about how busy I was for other people.
Mm. Mm. Did you find that you were making excuses?
Yeah. So I
Mm.
found I was making excuses because it's easy to make excuses when I'm not the source.
Ooh, wow. What do you mean by that when you're not the source?
Um, the way I was raised,
Mm-hmm.
I was told that life happens.
That's right.
And so I used to deduce that, well, life happens. That means something's happening to me.
Mm,
And so
okay.
I would react to life. This would happen.
Mm,
I wouldn't like it. I would react to it. And what I learned was a reaction is a preset way of thinking. A, res-
preset. Wow.
a response is a created way. It's a thoughtful way. So then I started to respond to life experiences.
Mm,
So when I respond, I would ask myself, well, how do I feel? I don't like this. Well, what do I want? What I want is this. Well, when I said what I wanted, that would come because I was getting things that I wanted before. So
right.
now I started just whatever things would happen, I would receive it and then spit out what I wanted. And then it started to change and my life started to switch around so fast.
Wow.
Mhm.
I want to touch on for a second. You mentioned dual or multiple realities. Can you express on that so the audience has an understanding of what you mean? How can one reach multiple realities?
Okay, so Aristotle is one of my favorite philosophers,
Me
and
too.
just hearing his story and then his protege, basically Plato,
Hmm.
understanding the allegory of the cave. Um, your truth is whatever you choose it to be.
Wow. Wow.
And so the dual reality of it is when I was that second season
Hmm.
where I already made everything I wanted to achieve, the next year I set more goals. And I dove into jumping the best jump of my life. Like I couldn't see it,
Hmm.
but like my heart felt it
Mm,
and like I would just I just my heart felt it. And so I would lay and meditate. I couldn't see anything, just pitch black, but I would
mm,
feel it. And so that dual reality was I knew that I hadn't physically done it, but I knew that I was going to do it.
mm,
And the thought of I'm going to do it and this is what it feels like.
mm.
The middle thing was me. I was the glue. So that
Oh,
concept of the multiple realities is, I know I haven't done it, but I
mhm.
can feel like I did it. But it's me that brings those two emotions, those things together. And then when it happens, that's that third reality is where it's complete.
Wow. I just got that right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard about that forever. Wow, I get that. I get that. That's the dual realities. It's who you've been, who you presently are, and who you can be. And then in order to reach this person, you've actually got to believe in it. You've got to actually see it and feel it. And when you're in that visualization process and seeing it and feeling it, you're almost chasing the feeling as
Mhm.
you're imagining it. And that's kind of what draws you to it. Is am I understanding?
Yeah, it's very similar to that. And I got that idea from
Mm.
Aristotle
Mm.
because history says, depending on what history you go through, right, is that he was one that also contributed to identifying that there's two different universes.
Mm.
And so for me, it I don't see it too much as universes. I just see it as two different ways of what's true. And I feel that we're living in multiple truths all at one time.
Mhm.
And you can choose to do something different. Well, that's your reality of changing. I could change the way I believe about how traffic is. That's my
Mm.
choice to change. So I shifted my reality. So that's kind of how I see it in the dual reality piece. However, there can only be one at a time.
There can
So
only be one reality at a time.
correct. So for me, like a lot of words cross over, but
Hmm.
for me, like my one reality is whatever I'm thinking or doing at that moment. So, if I'm happy or sad, well, I can't be happy and sad at the same time.
I see.
So I choose which one it is and I stay in that
Oh,
space.
I see. I see. What what I'm hearing is that I can choose to be happy or I can choose to wallow in sadness. And depending on whatever choice that is my current reality. It doesn't have to be. I have to be mindful that I'm choosing that experience for myself by choosing how I either want to respond or react or what thoughts I want to receive and how I want to what state of being I choose based on I guess the information that's in front of me or that I'm processing. And that is choosing my reality. So I mean all of us can choose a healthier reality then. We all have that ability.
Correct.
Wow. It's just about choosing how you want to respond to life. And in
Hmm.
responding to life, we can create life. And in creating life, we have more of a choice, more of a say so. Wow. In our
Hmm.
experiences. Wow. Is that
Yeah.
how you've kind of managed your experiences and gotten what you wanted?
Yeah. So it went even another layer further. But if I stay in that space where I was in that mental state, then it was, why don't I just ask for the
Mm.
biggest and best? If,
Scary.
because growing up, I'd be like, I don't really need this luxury car. Just an A to B car is
Mm.
fine. And then I would get an A to B car, and an A to B car has experiences. So now if the gas runs out or something breaks, I would get frustrated. Then I would respond and think, well, it doesn't break down, but I still have an A to B car. So I was like, if I'm going to ask for stuff, why don't I ask for literally the luxury and the greatest and gifts and toys that man can have? And so when I started to push that and go higher, that's where I was able to manifest my dream car.
Wow. And what was that?
Okay. So after those 2 years of reaching my goals, um, I went ahead and decided, well, 2 years ago, I wrote a 5-year plan. It had
Okay.
like a house and a car, whatever else on there. But I wasn't really focused on those because I was looking at the immediate, like that year. And the next year the goals happened again. So I'm like, you know what? I'm 2 years like in a row where I got it. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and grab a 5-year goal and see what happens with that. And the car that I wanted was a Range Rover. I wanted the 2008 body type, gray exterior, ivory interior, 22 inch. Like I can tell you exactly to where like you can know what the exact car looks like.
Wow.
And so I wrote that down, and I had it in a book, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, all right, it's written down, it's done, and I'm going to sit back and let life happen in favor, of the goal.
Hmm.
And a couple situations where like I would always voice my goals,
Hmm.
you know, and I would tell people, hey, my next car is a Range Rover. And they would say comments like, oh, that's amazing. Or they would say, yeah, whatever, you can't afford it. Whatever they said that was perceived by me as a negative, I would go home and write the positive version of that negative comment.
Wow, I like that.
And so it was, oh, they break down a lot. Went home, my car is durable, you
Wow.
know, things like that. And you can't afford it, I make enough money, you know, like all these things. Or it's a luxury car, I use a lot of gas because it's a big car. Well, I make enough money to pay for gas. Like gas is nothing to me. Like I would just affirm whatever it is. And then I kept writing on this sheet to where I ran out of, like, the page was full
Hmm.
of these affirmations. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting tired of writing this money thing. So like money's, so then I crossed it out and I changed my perception on money.
Hmm.
And I said, you know what? I want a free one. I want a free
Mm.
Range Rover. And then I got invited to a car show. One of my friends said, hey, I bought 2 tickets, just one extra one just in case I wanted to come. Do you want to come with me? And at first I was like, no, I don't really like cars like that. But then the voice said, like, would you go? Like I felt like something pushed me, like, hurry up. Like I sent this to you,
Mm.
So I went to the car show and realized that the Range Rovers were there. So I ran and found the Range Rovers and I just stayed there the whole time. I was touching it. I was in the steering wheel. I was acting like I was talking to my friends, like, hey, yeah, like doing all that stuff and just really just enjoying the moment. I took pictures with it. I then went to Walgreens or CVS, whatever, printed out the pictures. So I would sleep with a gold medal and I would sleep with money and I slept with a picture of me next to my Range Rover.
Wow.
Um, and I wouldn't do it every night, but I did it often.
Okay.
And while I did it, I was like, can't hurt. It was just, I'm doing it. It is what it is. And about a month, maybe like 6 or 8 months had passed by when I was really focused on those. And then um, the car that I had, the car that the company bought me, started breaking down because mind you, it's been 2 years at this
Okay.
point from when I got the car originally. And I was like, I'm not going to fix that car because my next car is a Range Rover.
Hmm.
So when the car started breaking down, I wasn't frustrated how I would have been. I would have reacted in frustration, but I responded with, "It's breaking down, which means my new car is coming."
Ooh, I
I was
love that
excited.
attitude.
Yeah, and so my mom had a friend that buys and sells cars, and he had sold one of her cars and had extra cash, like $4,000 cash or whatever, like credit.
Hmm.
And I called him and I was like, "Hey, the car that I have," forgetting that the Range Rover was coming. "The car that I have is breaking down. Like, do you have a car I can trade this car in for and use that credit?" And he was like, "Yeah, I can get you in something." So I show up to his lot. I'm sitting in this ugly car. I don't know what it was. To me, it wasn't a Range Rover, so it was ugly. And I was like, "This isn't it. Like, the car I'm supposed to have is the Range Rover." My mom calls me and says, "Hey, a month ago, I met this guy that buys and sells cars. He sells Range Rovers." And I was like, "Well, that's great, but you know, I literally have $4,000 credit, like no cash on hand, basically."
Hmm. Hmm.
And then she said, "No, he loves what you do with the kids. He's been following you, all that stuff. He wants to give you his Range Rover." So obviously, I hung up. Yeah, hung up, hopped out the car, drove my busted car out to Crenshaw, and at the Wendy's, right next to the airport. He was talking to my mom, like didn't like nothing to it. Just he had the keys in his hand. He was like, "Hey, hey, I'm finishing up." He tossed me the keys. He said my assistant's going to drive the car up. If you like it, take it for a test drive. If you like it, then it's yours. And I was like, okay. I go outside and the assistant drives up in the exact car that I manifested.
Really?
The exact,
Oh.
the exact car. And she hopped out. She was like, she seemed like she was mad because but I mean, it's my dream, it's my world,
Yeah,
so
you
I
manifested
hopped
it.
in, I drove it, and I just cried the whole time,
Aw,
like this out of gratitude.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and then he's like, the car will last, about 2 years. If it has any problems, don't worry about it. Just get rid of it. You'll probably make like $10,000 on it. And that's exactly what happened. I had it for a couple of years, drove it everywhere. I lived that life that people have with the Range Rover, and it just was amazing. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's a phenomenal story. If people don't believe, they're gonna believe now.
yeah. And I was
That's
posting on Instagram back in the day, all that stuff. Like I would see a Range Rover and be like, "Oh, I can't find my keys." That'd be my caption. And then after that, like I was able to. That was my car.
wow.
Yeah.
So, oh, what is it about the power of belief? I want to ask you one last question, right?
Mhm.
I want the audience to know, how is it that it sounds like you're fearless, in my opinion. Listening to your stories, you sound like you're fearless, and you've got a really good sense as far as like your intuitive guide is like on point. How
Mhm.
did you exercise that? How do we overcome fear and really, get like Keenan and, walk in our knowing, walk in that greater knowing, walk in our true self?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, it's just like any type of activity or skill. It's just learn. You practice every
Mm,
day and you go from there. Now, like I still deal with fear all the time. I still deal with all the same emotions. There's nothing different. It's just that I've had so many practices
mm-hmm,
of, failure and successes.
mm,
Is if I have a choice to fail or succeed, I'd rather succeed.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I also have, 24 hours in a day. How many hours am I going to spend worrying about something?
Wow, really
You
though.
know? And so, like, if I have $10 and something that I want to do costs $10, I'm using it. I'm taking it. I'm going to spend the money because,
Right.
there's certain things that we as humans set as like, I would never be homeless, or I would
Mm,
never not have food for my kids. Like there's always something that we set, like that's the bottom line, right?
mm,
Maybe because we've been through it before, but
mm.
either way, there's something that we set and say that's the line. That's not going to cross. Like I'm doing it, and so I just kept moving that bottom bar up. Because
Mm.
some of us say like I'm never being broke ever again. Well, that's the power of broke, by Damon John. Like good book to read, and that's what fuels people. And as an athlete, I watch so many athletes, and I will look at, just to say the white kids that came from an affluent area with money, like they had this other, they were just so successful, and it was easier for them. But then, I was in that middle between had just enough, but didn't have everything that I wanted, and
Mm.
so I would look with the athletes that were, I guess, say inner city and maybe just didn't come from money. It was the only option. It was I'm using basketball to get into college. Period. Like I had
Mm.
to use my sport to get into college. So there was no negotiation. There was no. It was, are you giving me a full scholarship or no? No, next
Mm.
school. Versus with my athletes now, they're negotiating, they're talking, they have all these options. They're into some schools financially, they're not,
Mm.
and having that bottom line of um, this is what's going to happen. I said, well, what if I put this is what's going to happen in that same determination or belief into my income, my love
Mm.
life, my family,
Mm.
like like and make the commitment to my faith, being faithful in whatever I'm moving towards, and allowing God, universe to always be there, and provide, and it'll always happen in God's time. And so, but I never question if it's going to happen because if I'm questioning if it's going to happen, then if it's going to happen is a thought process that I'm experiencing. And I'm going to
Yeah.
get more experience of more experiences of, is it going to happen? So I just completely commit to living the life as if it's already done. And it's scary, but so what? You know?
I love that so much. Exactly. So is life, right?
Mhm,
Life can be scary, and so can commitment. Thank you
mhm.
so much, Keenan, for your wisdom. Thank you so much for your transparency. Thank you for sharing so many great tools for the audience to take up and learn how to visualize, manifest, believe in themselves, and overcome their obstacles and fear. Keenan, can you share with the audience how they can reach you if anyone wants your services as a coach, mentor, or if they want to know more about the Keenan virtual coach?
They can visit my website, KeenanBriggs.com, or email me at info@KeenanBriggs.com. It's Keenan Briggs, KeinanBriggs, on all social media platforms.
Wonderful. Thank you again for your time and energy. Talk on topics.
Thank you.